taking us live. I think I just got the note there that we're live streaming. So welcome everyone to a meeting of the Education Economic Development Subcommittee. Today we have our higher education overview. Just a note on timing. As you all know, we're back on the floor at 2. So we were faced with the dilemma of either trying to rush this so much that it probably would have very little utility, or just not doing anything from 1 to 2 and coming back later. What we decided to do is we're going to get as much done from here between 1 and 2 as we can. If we have speakers left and presenters left, we're going to come back after session. We'll be coming back 15 minutes promptly after session to finish up whatever business we still have, because this is an important subject matter for this subcommittee. We don't want to shortchange it. So without further ado, Ian Klein is our analyst. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screen. I'm currently disabled from sharing, so just bear with me. Okay. All right, and at this point, you should see the higher education overview. Is that correct? Okay, so we're going to get started on page 2, which looks at state funding changes for higher education. The public four-year institutions funding increases by 19.5%, or $334 million from fiscal 2022 to 2023. Other higher education increases by 21.6%, or $143.8 million. This results in a total increase of 20.1%, or $477.9 million for total higher education, as shown in the bottom row. More detailed summary of these budget changes will be discussed in their respective agency and institutional budget analyses. Turning to page 6, Exhibit 1 shows state support for the public four-year institutions. When excluding agricultural research and extension funding at Eastern Shore and College Park, total funding increases by $334 million. Bowie State University receives the largest percentage increase, 35.9%, or an increase of $18.2 million. This is followed by the University of Maryland Eastern Shore with a 31% increase, Morgan State University with a 28.2% increase, and Coppin State University with a 25.6% increase. The primary driver of these increases is the funding mandated from Chapter 41 of 2021. Exhibit 2 on page 7 shows changes in state and local funding per FTEs from fiscal 2010 compared to fiscal 2020. Nationally, state and local funding spending per FTEs increased 8%, while 8 competitor states have also increased their funding. Maryland's increase of 20% falls below only California, Massachusetts, and Washington when looking at competitor states. Turning to Maryland state funding by segments, as seen in Exhibit 3 on page 8, this exhibit shows funding per FTEs at the Maryland two-year institutions. From 2012 to 2020, state funding increased by 67% and local funding by 98%. This, along with a declining enrollment at the Maryland public two-year institutions, has resulted in an increase in state and local funding per FTE. Exhibit 4 on page 9 shows state support and net tuition revenue per FTEs for the Maryland public four-year institutions. From 2012 to 2020, state support increased by 41%, while net tuition increased by 15%. Turning to Exhibit 5 on page 10, this exhibit compares the 5-year percent change in tuition and fees at Maryland's public institutions with our competitor states. In terms of the two-year institutions, the rates declined in 7 states, while nationally there was an increase of 1.2%. Except for California and North Carolina, the tuition rate in Maryland and the other competitor states exceeded the national average by at least $162. Overall, for academic year 2021-2022, the average tuition rate for Maryland was $4,826, making Maryland the 25th most expensive state in the country, or excuse me, the 20th most expensive state in the country. Tuition and fees at Maryland's public four-year institutions decreased by 2.2%, below the national average increase of 1%. At an average of $10,245 for the 2021-2022 academic year, Maryland had the 25th most expensive rate in the country. Exhibit 6 on page 11 shows total undergraduate enrollment by segment. Nationally, undergraduate enrollment declined 3.1% in fall 2021, while Maryland's total undergraduate enrollment declined by 5.8%. Enrollment decreased across all segments in fall 2021, as shown in Exhibit 6, with community colleges experiencing the largest decrease at 10.3%. It should be noted that the fall 2021 enrollment numbers reflect opening fall enrollment data and are subject to revision. Sarah Baker will now provide an update on progress toward 55% degree attainment.
So if you can go to Exhibit 7, please. This shows that the state exceeds its educational completion goal with over 55% Maryland's holding at least one degree credential. Now, a critical component to Maryland maintaining its 55% goal is improving the progression of students from K through 12 to post-secondary education. So prior to COVID-19, as is shown on Exhibit 8, the number of high school graduates was projected to peak in 2026 and then decline. But turning to Exhibit 9, you will see that the high school graduates in Maryland will be becoming more diverse. And while COVID appears to have had a minimal impact on graduates, there will be effect in later years that may impact the number of graduates in the out years, such as there have been declines in the primary school enrollments. While not impacting the number of high school graduates, COVID has impacted the number of graduates going immediately into college. So turn to Exhibit 10, please. Nationally, the percentage of graduates not going to college increased to almost 47% with the 2020 class. As shown in Exhibit 11, declines were the greatest in low income, high minority, and high poverty high schools. And looking at Maryland in Exhibit 12, over half of the 2020 graduated class did not immediately enroll in college. This equates to almost 4,600 more students not going to college, which has implications for Maryland to maintain its completion goal. And targeting programs and resources to the immediate college graduate enrollment is an easy point to intervene to increase the college going rate. Now I'll turn it back over to Ian.
Thank you. So we're going to now take a look at the transfer of college credits. Exhibit 13 on page 19 provides the U.S. Community College Bachelor's Degree 6-year completion rate by category. The purple bar shows that after 6 years, only 14.6% of those who begin at a community college ended up attaining a bachelor's degree for the fall 2014 cohort. When looking at the rate for those who successfully transferred out of community college, the red bar, the rate is substantially higher at 47.4%. There are many reasons that individuals are unsuccessful at attaining a bachelor's degree when beginning at a community college. When attempting to transfer community college credits, it is generally at the discretion of the receiving institution to determine whether course credits will be counted towards graduation and, as importantly, a student's major. You'll also ask MHEC, the University System of Maryland, Morgan State, St. Mary's, MICUA, and the Maryland Association of Community Colleges to comment on what steps are being taken to assist the transfer student population, specifically identifying actions that have been taken as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic to more easily facilitate the transfer process for these students. Exhibit 14 on page 21 shows the national fall 2020 and 2021 transfer numbers. After experiencing significant declines in fall 2020, the fall 2021 numbers have begun to stabilize, with only the community college sector continuing an enrollment decline from the transfer student population. Moving to the issues, which begin on page 23, the first issue involves the impact the COVID-19 pandemic continues to have on higher education. Exhibit 15 on page 23 provides the change in number of students enrolling in college after high school from fall 2020 to fall 2021. As shown in the exhibit, there continues to be a decrease in the number of students enrolling in college after high school as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Exhibit 16 on page 24 shows the changes in enrollment by higher education segments, both nationally and within Maryland. As shown in the exhibit, all segments decreased in fall 2021, with community college enrollment decreasing by the largest amount in Maryland at 10.3%. The Maryland public four-year institutions decrease was in line with the national average, while Maryland's private nonprofit institutions experienced a less than 1 percentage point decline. Maryland community colleges, as previously mentioned, experienced the greatest decrease among the three segments within the state, with their declines more in line with what was seen nationally at community colleges in fall 2020. The American Council on Education surveyed college and university presidents to gauge what their largest concerns were as a result of the continued COVID-19 pandemic. As shown in Exhibit 17 on page 25, the mental health of students remains the top concern for university leaders. Exhibit 18 on page 26 identifies actions that have been taken by higher education segment to address those mental health concerns. In order to return to an in-person instruction modality for the fall 2021 semester, higher education institutions across the nation adopted differing mandates to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. While just under half of all institutions nationwide adopted regular testing and vaccine mandates, over 80% adopted mask mandates for students and regular staff, as shown in Exhibit 19. Exhibit 20 on page 28 provides the instruction modality adopted by higher education segments as reported in the American Council on Education survey. 50% of all institutions offered primarily in-person instruction, while roughly 1 in 3 indicated that the COVID-19 pandemic had not, at that time, impacted instruction modality for the fall 2021 semester. ELS asks USM, St. Mary's, Morgan, MICUA, and MAC to comment on the steps that have been taken to address education delivery and access for their students and their spring 2022 instruction plans. The continued COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted the financial health of higher education institutions across the nation. Exhibit 21 on page 29 provides the total higher education emergency relief funding that had been provided to the respective Maryland higher education segments. In total, between fiscal 2020 and fiscal 2022, over $1.2 billion has been allocated to these segments. The second issue begins on page 30 and concerns standardized testing and college admissions. As shown in Exhibit 22 on page 30, as recently as fall 2017, a prospective student's standardized test score, either being an ACT or SAT score, was considered as one of the top 5 most important criterion when determining college admittance by admissions counselors. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, however, has dramatically altered how higher education institutions utilize standardized test scores in admittance. With test days being limited, the number of spaces available tests also being limited, and test dates being canceled due to the pandemic, institutions across the nation have adopted test optional admittance policies. Exhibit 23 on page 31 documents this dramatic shift, as 774 institutions nationally for the 2020-2021 academic year opted to adopt a test optional admissions policy. Due to the pandemic, all USM, MICUA, as well as Morgan State and St. Mary's institutions have also temporarily adopted this policy. DLS asks USM, Morgan, St. Mary's, and MICUA to comment on future plans concerning the usage of standardized tests in the admissions process and how institutions determine the preparedness of entering freshmen. DLS has one operating budget recommended action, which is found on page 33. DLS is requesting the annual report on instructional faculty workload for the public 4-year institutions. This concludes our presentation, and we would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Ian. Any questions for the analyst? Any questions from the members? I haven't seen anyone pop up. So Ian, thank you so much for a great presentation and analysis. Let's move on to our agencies. We'll start with University System of Maryland. Dr. Perman, our chancellor, is with us. Dr. Perman, it's great to see you. Welcome. And you can introduce your team, and that's true for all of our presenters. You can just introduce your own team.
Thank you very much, Chairman Barnes. It's good to see you, to see all of the members of the committee, and of course, my colleagues in higher education. I want to specifically address Mr. Klein and Ms. Baker's questions that they included in their excellent analysis as it relates to the system. The analysts asked us to comment on steps being taken to help the transfer student population, specifically actions that have followed in the midst of the pandemic to facilitate the transfer process. And I'm going to start with the fact that many of us on this Zoom call, even beyond the system, are very pleased that we've been able to begin transitioning to a new and more powerful ARTSYS platform. ARTSYS is the articulation system for Maryland colleges and universities. And the system's implementation started this month. There are 35 participating institutions which should be up and running by the end of April. And staff training on the system will start in March. It'll run from March through May. Getting to this point has been a heavy lift. I'm pleased to say the system was proud to lead this effort and most appreciative for the participation of about 36 institutions. It's a game changer for Maryland students. It gives them a much better understanding of what transfers where, puts them more in control of their own education, saves them time, money, a lot of frustration. My Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Antoinette Coleman, is with me today in case there are more specific questions related to its operation. I will say on behalf of the system and colleagues that all of us participating in ARTSIS are eager for the kind of funding we need going forward to support this enhanced platform. Beyond ARTSIS, I want to acknowledge that over these past few years, the system has been focused on more than providing students a seamless transfer experience, but especially on supporting them to success with new or expanded programs that provide, in particular, targeted academic advising, individualized attention and services. I think we all realize that we must be much more in a concierge mode to get people who come in to stay, to be successful, and to finish with that degree. And I think all of you are aware that this is something that challenges higher education in this nation. About 40% who start don't finish, and that has to be fixed. We're particularly grateful that our community college pipeline into the system is still strong. While we did see a dip in transfer students last year, we didn't see a huge drop, which I think means that those students who want a four-year degree are still seeking one and seeking one from us. I wish to comment next on steps being taken to address education delivery and access for students and our spring 2022 instruction plans. The system is back to full activity after the winter break, and there will be no Omicron-induced delays to in-person instruction. The campuses are active and in person. I'm happy to report to you low COVID positivity rates system-wide. That's a testament to the rigorous disease mitigation protocols which have worked for us, which we still have in place. Our vaccination mandate, which we put into place in the spring of 2020, boosters for residential students, masking, testing, all of the mitigation steps that you're also familiar with. And these protocols continue to allow in-person teaching and learning without undue risk to our students and our employees. We are employing high flex course delivery for students if they need to quarantine so that they have uninterrupted access to the instruction they expect and the instruction they need. Thirdly, we've been asked to comment on future plans for the use of standardized tests in the admissions process and how institutions determine the preparedness of entering freshmen. Our current admissions policy requires that students have a standardized test score unless the Board of Regents has granted that particular institution that wishes to change an exception. And we do have a few institutions with exceptions. That includes the Global Campus, Salisbury University, and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. However, when the pandemic interrupted standardized testing, the board gave me the authority to permit exceptions. And at that point, all system institutions went to the test optional admission. Each of our universities has its own admissions criteria and process, but they all consider the general level of preparation, high school transcripts, other factors in their admissions decision. And I would say, given the national movement toward a test optional approach, and given the more comprehensive admission process that was developed during the pandemic, we have a very active work group to propose a change in our admissions policy to permit more campus flexibility. This proposal is going to the regents in the late spring. I think you can all infer where this is likely to go. In the meantime, given the ongoing pandemic, we have temporarily granted universities the flexibility to remain test optional. I will add that across the system, our admissions and financial aid officers are working closely with one another, given that many scholarships currently require an ACT or SAT score to qualify. So we're looking at new definitions for scholarship requirements. And finally, the analysts asked us to comment on the system and continuing to provide annual instructional workload reports for our faculty. And the USM should include the percentage of faculty meeting or exceeding teaching standards at UMB. And yes, we'll continue, of course, to provide faculty workload reports annually related to UMB because professional schools have no standards for teaching a specific number of classes for very good reason. We won't be able to report that information for UMB, but of course we will work with you to provide any other information that we can in that regard. And that includes my response to the questions, Chairman Barnes.
Thank you, Dr. Perman. I want to also thank you for taking the test optional so seriously. You know, Tony Bridges, Delegate Bridges, who had been a member of the subcommittee, had pushed that a lot last year. And I know he's now subcommittee chair of his own right. I know he'll be happy to know how seriously the system is taking that, and we will pass that on.
Thank you.
And also for getting us your COVID data that we asked for you monthly. The system did a great job updating the subcommittee as we asked, and we appreciate when agencies respond the way that they should. So thank you for that. I know there are probably some questions for you and your team. So are there any questions for the Chancellor? Well, I guess not. I guess you answered all the questions, sir.
Thank you.
So thank you for being with us. We will turn to St. Mary's College. Dr. Jordan is with us, I believe. Yes, there you are. Nice to see you. Always great to see you, Dr. Jordan.
Well, Delegate Barnes, it's great to be seen, and it's really good to see you again too. I want to say good afternoon to all of you on the subcommittee and to my colleagues out in virtual land. It's good to see you all. With me today is Chip Jackson, our government relations liaison. And before I respond to specific questions, let me just express my appreciation for your support at St. Mary's College. Thank you so very much. With our spring semester now well underway, I'm pleased to let you know that St. Mary's College is doing well. Total enrollment is up 2% this year, and it's up 5% over the past 2 years despite the pandemic. And together with the implementation of our new LEAD curriculum that integrates the benefits for traditional liberal arts education with applied professional skills demanded by today's economy, our enhanced marketing and recruiting efforts implemented to launch as our new brand as the National Public Honors College, and new academic programs in neuroscience and marine science are resonating well with prospective high school students and their families. We're also working hard to remain affordable. We have frozen tuition for 2 consecutive years, and today tuition remains less than it was 8 years ago in 2013. You will find more information about enrollment and affordability in our written testimony. And finally, before I respond directly to the questions, I want to thank the analysts for their excellent work in preparing the report. So now to respond to the questions. The first one about steps being taken to assist the transfer student population, specifically as a result of COVID-19 to more easily facilitate the student transfer process. The college has continued to work towards enhancing the pipeline for transfer students. We've dedicated transfer admission staff and work closely with prospective transfer students and community colleges to make the transfer process as smooth and easy as possible. Now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the college added virtual options for recruitment and admission counseling to serve prospective transfer students. We did not experience a reduction in new transfer students the last 2 years due to the pandemic. Also, as a result of the college's efforts, our four-year graduation rate for transfer students has increased from 62% in 2017 to 74% in 2021. In response to the next question regarding steps that have been taken to address education delivery and access for our students in spring 2022 instruction plans, for fall 21 semester, the college returned to full in-person campus environment with courses held in classrooms in a manner similar to pre-COVID conditions, but with COVID public health restrictions in place. So of course, that's masking, shot mandates, and of course, appropriate spacing in buildings to de-densify them. And for spring 2022, which began on January 17th, we started the same ways we did for fall 21, fully in person. The only difference is that we have mandated that all faculty, students, and staff also get their booster shots. And those who do not get their boosters are being tested twice a week until they comply. For the next question, our future plans concerning the usage of standardized tests in the admissions process and how we're determining the preparedness of entering freshmen. I want you to know that the college made the decision in 2019 to become test optional in the admission process following research that we did on the validity of standardized testing to predict a St. Mary's College student success. The research concluded that a prospective student's standardized test score was less accurate in predicting academic success than the student's high school GPA. And for underrepresented students, the correlation between test scores and academic success was even less. So as a result, the college made the decision to become test optional in the admission process before the pandemic, and we expect to remain test optional moving forward. The way by which our admission staff determines preparedness for entering freshmen is by carefully reviewing and assessing academic preparation. So even though we don't require them to declare their potential major when they apply, we do look at what they say they're going to do and what kind of courses they took to prepare for that. We also look at the coursework that they've taken and consider that based on opportunities available to them in their high school curriculum. to assess whether or not they can be successful at St. Mary's College. So that concludes my responses to the questions that the analyst asked. I'm happy to address any questions.
And thank you as well, Dr. Jordan, for all your information you've provided during the interim and your team. It's been great, and all the good work you do. Questions for Dr. Jordan at St. Mary's or her team? Okay, well, that was an easy one, Dr. Jordan. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
We have Sarah Fiddler from MICUA and her team. I think she may have a president or two with her.
No presidents today.
Okay. Well, good to see you. We're good with just you. It's all good.
So thank you so much for letting me participate today. Again, as the chair mentioned, I'm Sarah Fiddler. I'm from the Maryland Independent College and University Association. MICUA represents 13 diverse state-aided private nonprofit institutions of higher education. We serve almost 58,000 students in both undergraduate and graduate programs. And demographically, about a quarter of our students are low-income Pell Grant recipients and almost half are students of color. And I think you have my written testimony. I've included some more demographic information for you at the back of the testimony. So MICUA operates in numerous geographic locations throughout the state. We offer about 1,700 approved academic programs, and in 6 counties, we are the only four-year institution of higher education that's located there. So again, we are extremely grateful for the financial support that the legislature provides for our students and our schools through the Sellinger program. And we believe that this is a wise investment, as with only 3% of the higher education funding, we then return high retention and graduation rates, which outperform our peers at the national level. We also have shorter time to degree, low student loan default rates, and top-ranked mid-career salary earnings. So we look forward to discussing this investment further with you later in the session. As my colleagues have said, we also believe that the higher education overview was well written and thorough, and we thank both Ian Klein and Sarah Baker for their work, as well as others at the Department of the Legislative Services that we know contributed to the report. So I will also address the 3 questions that were asked of us. Regarding the transfer student population, the MICUA institutions remain greatly interested and heavily invested in facilitating meaningful transfer pathways for these individuals. We welcomed over 400 transfer students during the fall of 2019 and 2020, and we continue to strengthen the number of articulation agreements that we have. At this point, we have almost 200 with different community college partners throughout the state. Although the pandemic has had a significant impact on community college student enrollment, we have been diligent and innovative in providing outreach to these students to ensure that they still know of the opportunities available to them. This includes digitizing materials, providing virtual tours and information sessions, increased flexibility with deadlines, strengthening the role of peer mentors, and increasing financial aid. So one of the things I want to tell you about today is that since July of 2021, 10 of the MICUA institutions have partnered with all 16 community colleges to expand and improve transfer pathways to the liberal arts via a planning grant that we received from the Teagle and the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations. So there are 4 pillars of our planning grant: simplicity, success, scholarly pathways, and security. And it's designed to determine and ensure a seamless transition for transfer students to our schools. So the work groups intend to make recommendations later this winter or into the spring, and then hopefully we'll have solutions to transfer-related barriers and concerns, some best practices for data collection sharing, and ways to improve digital functionality in terms of communicating between schools. We anticipate seeking an implementation grant in the summer of 2022 to continue this work. We also participate in ArtSys and Quotely, and we're appreciative to the system for including us with that. I think there are 6 and maybe 7 schools from MICUA who are involved in that, and we're excited about the future of that system. So moving into the spring 22 semester, which was another question that was asked, the MICUA institutions are once again implementing a variety of measures to ensure the safety of our on-campus communities. Almost every MICUA institution requires vaccination for students, faculty, and staff. More than half require boosters, and 2 are also requiring the flu vaccine this year. There are also masking requirements. Several of our institutions are not only requiring, but providing the KN or the N95 masks and reducing capacity in shared spaces. There are also several campuses that have increased testing on campus to multiple times per week for both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. So a few of our institutions moved their January term classes online, and almost all either closed campus or allowed their staff to work remotely during this time. We increased the number of modalities that are available for our courses, including blended, hybrid, online, and in-person components. And a few schools delayed the start of the spring semester by a week or 2. But by now, I'm happy to report that all of our institutions have resumed their in-person instruction with some limited exceptions. Some of the classes that have 50 students or more are going to stay online. So I did want to talk just briefly, in addition to academic access, MICUA institutions have also implemented some innovative programs and services beyond those that were funded through federal COVID relief funding in order to address this kind of issue of the pandemic taking things remotely. And that includes admissions, advising, financial aid, and career services taking place online. Several of our schools have run on-campus vaccination and booster clinics, in many instances opening it to the local communities that go beyond the campus community. There are flexible telework policies for staff. There's increased access to virtual fitness, wellness, and mental health services. And they've also sponsored a variety of virtual social ways for students to connect, such as movie nights, concerts, trivia games, and treasure hunts. So while things are going as well as can be expected, there are several ongoing pandemic-related impacts that continue to give us pause. And these are the same things I'm sure that our colleagues are thinking about: recurring COVID surges and general health and safety of campus communities, ongoing costs for testing, quarantine, and personal protective equipment. And we're also seeing labor and staffing shortages. So we look forward to continuing to working with you. The third question in the analysis related to standardized testing, and we have 10 institutions that did not require a standardized test as part of undergraduate applications for fall of 21. Several waive the requirement and intend to restore it once it's safe to do so, but some institutions have permanently waived testing requirements. Regardless, the MICUA institutions have always used a holistic approach to the student's application and give the most weight to the courses taken and the GPA and the breadth of experience in the high school. So I just want to talk a little bit about financial aid. We continue to see increased need. We continue to prioritize financial aid for our students. Again, we used 91% of our Selinger funding, which was $54 million for financial aid for our Maryland students. So that's thanks to you for helping make that possible. And I also wanted to mention the Guaranteed Access Partnership Program, which I think most of you are familiar with. MICUA matches 100% of the state awarded Guaranteed Access grant so that these low income students can receive up to $38,600 in the 21-22 academic year towards their pursuit of higher education at their choice of institution. And over the past 5 years, GAP has been a MICUA investment of over $45 million in these students. So thank you again for including us. I just wanted to give you a heads up, if you haven't already heard, that we are going to have our Independent Higher Education Day virtually this year. It's on February 23rd, and we hope that you'll have time on your calendars to meet with our students that day. And we have really enjoyed this relationship and this partnership, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the information you provided. We'll be sure to mark February 23rd on our calendars. Any questions from MICUA? Okay, looks like you're off easy today as well, Sarah. Thanks for being with us, and great to see you. I think we're going to move to Dr. Wilson. And Dr. Wilson, I do see you there in the center of my screen. It's great to see you. I do want to personally thank you on behalf of the committee for hosting us at a great site visit this interim. I had a great time. It was really instructive, and your team did a great job. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Dr. Wilson.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Barnes, and I want to be judicious with the time as well. We certainly appreciated you and the committee coming to Morgan during the off session. We certainly always appreciate the analysts. Great job as you have heard. I do have several members of my team with me. First, our provost, Dr. Hong Ta Yu, the Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration, Mr. Sidney Evans, Dr. Carol Turner, who's our Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success, and Dr. Dawn Terry Veal, who is the Vice President for State and Federal Relations and Chief of Staff. And so I'm going to run through this actually in about 3 to 5 minutes. And so with regard to where we are at Morgan, of course, we have the largest enrollment in our 154-year history. We coming in at about 8,500 plus students. We had a 95, almost 100% increase in new freshmen this year over last year. We literally had to shut down our application portal. We could not accept any more applications. And of course, we don't have any space to house all the students either. And so it is a good problem to have, but yet a challenging one for us as well. We also continue to enjoy historic retention rates, graduation rates, all of the metrics with regard to student outcomes. With regard to your first question, we, of course, have been paying a lot of attention here at Morgan to how we engage our community college colleagues. We have put in place a program a long time ago called the TIP program, the Transfer Incentive Program, where we were offering students their $2,000 scholarships up to 5 semesters, a total of $10,000 if they stayed at the community colleges for 2 years, completed their degrees, and we have identified about 11 or 12 baccalaureate completion opportunities at Morgan that they could come and transfer and finish in 5 years, and they would get $10,000. In addition, we also understand that transfer students, they were frustrated, some of them, with some of the things that we were not doing at Morgan. And so we listened to them. And as a result, we invested some resources, and we put in place a system here where before the student transfers to Morgan, they can actually go online and they can do their own assessment as to whether the courses they have already taken or the ones that they enrolled in are going to transfer. And so therefore they don't need to confer with a transfer coordinator or counselor in the process. They can do it themselves. And this is really also an outgrowth of what we're doing with our students on campus through Degree Works. And it has worked like a charm, so to speak. Our students can go online at any point and they see exactly where they are and what they need to complete it. My son finished here in May, and he gave me access to the portal, and I was on it almost every other day saying, you got to take this course, you got to take that course, but it worked very, very well for him. We also, with regard to our transfer, we have invested some more resources in our back-end offices as well. So we can create for the transfer student one opportunity for them to just go online and say, I have all of these questions. And then that comes into a central portal that's triaged by the staff here at the university, and those are responded to expeditiously. And so we're very excited about what we're doing with transfer students. Had virtual admissions days, virtual orientations for transfer students, and we think we're in a good place. Of course, it's a rare bird that can't stand some improvement, and we are constantly looking to do that. With regard to the second question, the steps that we've taken to address education delivery, I just simply have to say that the HERF money has really, really served us well. And of course, the support that we get from you is always pushing this institution to embrace the highest level of excellence in all categories and innovation. And so what we did here was, we only had very few classrooms that were equipped to offer high flex or Morgan Flex. And, you can conclude that those classrooms were in the new buildings that we constructed, the ones like you visited. But we didn't have them all over campus in our legacy buildings. And so we retrofitted 240 classrooms here at Morgan in high flex, Morgan Flex. And as a result, we are in a position now where almost every student at Morgan will have an option where they could take a class here with the exception of labs and internships and all of that in a way that will befit them. They can basically take that class in this kind of high flex model. They can take it face-to-face or they can take it online. And so this spring, 25% of the students here at Morgan are taking their courses through High Flex or Morgan Flex. 16% are taking those courses exclusively online, and 60% are taking the courses exclusively face-to-face. And so in response to the last question with regard to what we are doing with regard to tests, standardized tests, I have to say that we have been discussing this at Morgan for a while. Dr. Turner has perhaps become nauseated with my pushing her to have another discussion. And so before the pandemic, here's where we were, still requiring standardized tests, but we have a center here called the Center for Predictive Analytics, where they begin to work with faculty to pull together an instrument that we think could ultimately take the place nationally of standardized tests in assessing the readiness on the part of Black students and Latinx students to enter college and be successful in college. The instrument right now, of course, has received a provisional trademark and a patent, and we are moving forward to further develop it. It is being beta tested right now. It's about a 100-item instrument, and it has about 7 constructs. And so we are very, very excited about the fact that this could emerge on the national scene after it has undergone all the beta testing here at Morgan as an instrument that we think could better assess the readiness on the part of students, particularly students of color, to enter the university environment and to be successful wherever they enter in the United States, if you will. And in this space as well, I chaired for 6.5, 7 months, the National Task Force on Standardized Testing for the NCAA. It was a 19-member task force, and over the 6 months, we listened to all of the national experts in the United States on this, going back even to the history of standardized tests. And Mr. Chair and the committee, we were all over the book at the beginning of this task force conversation. At the end, I can say it was a unanimous vote that there is no way that we could go forward and recommend the use of standardized tests to the NCAA based on what we had learned. And so I did give that report publicly about, I think it was November. ESPN did carry a part of that. And here at Morgan, we are looking very closely at where 77% of higher education is right now, and that is test optional, and chances are that's where we're going to end up as well. And so Chairman Barnes and the rest of the committee, in a very truncated way, those are my comments and my responses to your questions.
We thank you for that, and thank you for all your hard work. I think the public can hear the bell. So are there any questions for Dr. Wilson and his team? Vice Chair Solomon.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Dr. Wilson, it's good to see you. I think this is just sort of more generally to the institutions that have been here. And I know we're going to lose you all in a couple of minutes. But thank you for each of you for being here. Just kind of a general question. One of the numbers that really stuck out to me in the report is the 5,000 or so students that graduated in 2020, but then didn't enroll in college. And so, I'd love to get the community college's opinions on this when we were with them later in the day. But before we lose all of you, what sort of systemic plans, or has there been, conversation among all the institutions to sort of come up with a plan statewide to figure out how do we go after those 5,000 students that didn't enroll after graduating? What's our plan? How do we get them into an institution in the state and get them in the system?
Is that for anybody? Billy?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't want to cut in. This is obviously multifactorial. There's no question, in my opinion, that we all need to focus on improving the college-going culture. You ask whether there's a statewide plan. I would say that we all have our ideas. Maybe they merge together, and maybe that's what we need to work to. My own opinion is that what we do in higher education too often is start too late with students. We try to interest them late in high school. It's probably too late. And for ourselves in the system, we are intending to focus much more at the middle school level. Obviously with our partners in pre-K to 12, and not trying to intervene in what they're doing because they're the experts. But what we need to do is to do our part with regard to kids in the 6th grade. Maybe that's too late, but we need to do what we can in terms of helping to get them excited about college, helping them to see role models so that they know they can do it. And obviously, if possible, keeping them in a non-leaky pipeline so that by the time they are in 12th grade, they're excited about colleges, they've been on our respective campuses, and they're ready to do the work. I know that's not terribly specific, but I feel very passionate about what you've brought up, Delegate Sullivan.
And could I just chime in a moment? I appreciate what Chancellor Pearman just shared. Here's what I see in addition to that. If you go back to the data that the analysts shared, this has been disproportionate with regard to minority communities and urban communities, right? And we at Morgan have our noses to the ground, so to speak. And number one, the pandemic has just ravaged, poor communities, Black communities, and it has ripped the heart out of so many students that I think will be almost lost for a number of years. It's going to take us a while to replace what these students have lost in terms of virtual learning. And then on top of that, they've had personal loss. Their parents have, may have passed away, grandmom, granddad, and then they lost their jobs. And then you got the financial burden, if you will. And quite frankly, then you have mental health issues and psychological issues. And so there's so much going on, as the Chancellor indicated, is multifaceted. And I think this in Maryland, in and of itself, if I were to say, if I would make a recommendation to the chair and the committee, it would be that I think a study that will involve these higher ed institutions that you're talking about today, where we bring a researcher or two from each of our sectors to look at this, perhaps under the umbrella of impact, would be a strategic way to go.
Thank you for that, Dr. Wilson. I think Dr. Jordan wanted to weigh in as well. Dr. Jordan?
Yeah, I just have one little short thing. I agree with everything that's been said, but I also think that we in higher ed, as Chancellor Pearman said, there's this leaky pipeline, but not everyone is meant to go to college immediately. And we have to give them the opportunity to step out of the pipeline to experience the world. And I think that as we're developing our curricula, we don't think about multiple entry points into what it is we do to educate the people writ large. And until we can really think more broadly, and that higher ed is not just for those coming right out of high school into college, we're going to forever have this kind of challenge. And what we're seeing is too that individuals coming out are very curious about the world, and some of them just want to make money immediately, and they eventually come back. So how do we make that? That's not transfer. That's coming in at an older and a different stage in your life. How do we make that easier for them to do and let them become aware that they can do that at a four-year institution, not just at the community colleges? So I think that that's an important part of the conversation that is missing as we're thinking about educating our people writ large. What is it that they need? And we have to think in a 21st century kind of way.
Thank you. That answer your question, Vice Chair Solomon? Feel good?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? So what we're going to do, I don't see any other questions. We're going to pause, and I'm sorry to Secretary Fiedler and Brad Stevens and Brad Phillips. I'm sorry that we didn't get you, but the good news is that we will. We will reconvene 15 minutes after session ends. For all of those who have presented, you're welcome to come back and join us, but we will hold you harmless if you decide your work here is done and you want to move on with your afternoon. For everyone else, we'll see you. For members and for our community colleges and MHEC, the committee will send out a new link. So look out for that. Make sure your staffs look out for that. There'll be a new link coming, and we'll see you 15 minutes after session. And doing the best we can. So thank you, everyone, for understanding.
Thank you.